Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we got a nice 14 game slate for Saturday at noon. This is a pretty big slate, so there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers to look at. Obviously, without most of the teams having yet played a game, we can't be too certain about their depth charts. But most of the teams have some depth charts out by now, and so I was able to find a good idea of who I think is going to be like the top guys and top starters and stuff like that. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it straight away. So for quarterbacks, okay, so I have two quarterbacks that are kind of in dangerous positions because of blowout risk, and one of those is Dylan Gabriel for Oklahoma. He's going to come in and be the starting quarterback this year fully, and he should have a really solid year. However, in a big blowout risk, he definitely has a risk at his price range. And then the other one is Tagovailoa. Sorry, I don't know how to say his name correctly. He's Tua's brother, and he's kind of in the same situation. Maryland should be able to handle Buffalo pretty good. He had a really good season last year, but again, another blowout risk. So I only want to pay up for him if you think that they can keep the game close, because otherwise he might sit out in the second half. And then to go ahead and get into some of the players that are going to not be such a blowout risk. So the first quarterback that I like is Tune. Now I've listed these in order of price, so these aren't exactly a specific order that I think is best to worst, but I'm listing these based on the prices. So Tune is $7,900 for Houston, and they have a good matchup against UTSA. He's also one of the best passers in his conference, so that should definitely help. He obviously had 3,500 yards and 30 touchdowns last season, so look for him to build on that. The next is Devin Leary for North Carolina State against ECU. He's a similar kind of quarterback with lots of upside, and he should be playing the whole game because it'll probably be a pretty tight game and a high-scoring one at that. Then I have KJ Jefferson for Oklahoma, or sorry, Arkansas. Sorry about that. Against Cincinnati, obviously it's a little bit of a tougher matchup, but I think he's going to be one of the best up-and-coming quarterbacks this season, and he's going to be the starter, it looks like. And he runs the ball really well, which is definitely an advantage. You can get some extra points that way, so we definitely like that as well. Frank Harris for UTSA is my next option against Houston. That game should be pretty close, and he had a really good season last year. That game is going to be pretty high scoring, so we're going to like him as an option just because you need guys that can score and are going to be in the game the whole game in order to maximize that fantasy point output. Then I have Drake May, the quarterback at UNC. He had a really good week in his week 0 game against Florida A&M. He had 29 receptions for 294 yards and 5 touchdowns. Now, we don't actually expect him to get that high of a number in this game, but he still has a lot of potential. He's starting off his career really good, and he's got some good wide receivers too. So we're definitely going to take a look at him as a quarterback option, and he's pretty inexpensive at $7,100. Keep in mind you have to average out 6,250. So and also you always probably want to put a quarterback in this S flex position. At least this week I do, because of the quality quarterbacks that are cheaper. So to maximize our actual fantasy lineup points. Then I have two guys that are kind of in what I would say not the most ideal situations, but they are guys I think are going to have a pretty good season and do good to start off the year. One of them is Caden Beckman and Mara from Michigan. Now, they're in a blowout risk as well, but he does have a potential to do really good against Western Michigan. And then the final guy is Holton Alhires for ECU. He seems like he's gonna just have a really big year of yards and everything else, and he's $6,100. He's kind of a Hail Mary option. ECU, they are playing. Who are they playing here? North Carolina State. North Carolina State is favored by 11 points, but they're going to have to throw the ball to keep up with them, and so I think that he'll have a good opportunity to do pretty good in this matchup. So that's what I got at quarterback. I think that those are probably the best options available, and you can kind of mix and match those for the quarterback in the S-flex position if you like, or just use one in the quarterback and then use the S-flex for a running back or wide receiver. But I typically like to put a quarterback there just because they have the most potential for quality points. So let's get into the running backs. So the overall best running back is going to be Eric Gray for Oklahoma. Obviously, that's a blowout risk as well, so you do have to be aware of that. I think Oklahoma's favored by 30 points. And then the second guy is also in the same situation, and that is Chair Bonnet for UCLA. They're also in a blowout risk, but he's also one of the top running backs on the slate. I think that it's probably not wise to use either one of them unless you just really have the money to pay up for them and think that those games are going to be a little bit closer than Vegas thinks, which is definitely possible. Texas A&M's kind of in the same situation. Their running back has been named the preseason second team All-SEC. Obviously, there's a lot of really good running backs in the SEC, and against a weaker team, he should stand out. Plus, he's kind of looking to break out this year. And but again, blowout risk with that as well. And then finally, the last blowout risk that I see here is Blake Corum from Michigan. He seems like he's due to break out this season. He's going to be a top running back in the Big Ten, and I think he should be a guy that you want to take a look at. But again, another blowout risk as well. Then to get on the guys that I think are going to be better to use, one of them is Kenny McIntosh for UGA. His production level should be pretty good, even though he was the backup last year. I think he's going to come in and be one of the top options this week. And another guy that I think is in a similar situation to him is Raheem Sanders for Arkansas. Now he has got a little bit of a tougher matchup from a running perspective than McIntosh does, but they're both kind of in the same price range, and they're a little bit cheaper than I expected them to be based on the production and what their teams do. Like, Georgia likes to run the ball just as much as pass, and they're more of a, offense is going to just try to wear you out, and I think McIntosh is going to do that. Arkansas is kind of in a similar situation this season, and so I like Raheem Sanders to be a pretty cheap but palatable option as well. The next guy I like is how do I say this guy's name? Bentley. Sorry. Ulysses Bentley the fifth. He's $5,600 for Mississippi. He has some pretty good upside, but he is in a kind of a blowout risk for Mississippi. Not as big of a risk as some of the other guys, but I look for Mississippi to really pound the ball and do some unorthodox things, and he's somebody that could definitely do that for them. And then Cameron Peoples for Appalachian State against UNC. That game's going to be tight, and he should get a bunch of touches. He even last year, he had some games that were really big, and so it's just a matter of him getting the touches. And then if it's a tight game, he definitely will. And then the last guy is Amarian Hampton for UNC. So I know it doesn't show any stats on here, but last week he had 25 fantasy points and led the team in carries, had a couple touchdowns, stuff like that. And so I expect him to have maybe not as big of a game, but he's $3,000, so he feels like a guy that you should be able to tab right in here. And just to show you the UNC, see here, where is it? I'll show you the other running backs that are on UNC. So their top guy is out, and then DJ Jones was kind of the starter in a sense. But he really didn't play much, and he didn't do very well. He kind of played more of a wide receiver / role for them, and then Amarian Hampton came in and got the majority of the touches. Now, he did, there's some risk with him because that game last week was kind of a blowout, but and this one isn't necessarily expected to be, but I think, you don't need him to score a crap ton of points in order to do that, and he's going to get touches because in college football, your second running back often gets some touches at the very least, and if he can, steal a touchdown here or there, or if a UNC does manage to pull away from them, which is definitely possible, he's going to be fine. Unfortunately for North Carolina, their top running back guy is not all that great, so he really has the opportunity, especially after a good showing last week. So that's really what I have at running back. So obviously Hampton is kind of more of a wild card, but I think he is somebody at minimum price that's going to be worth taking a look at, and so just consider that in your lineups. As for wide receivers, so we're actually going to start off with Mr. Josh Downs for UNC. Obviously last week he had 2 touchdowns. and he looks poised to continue to become a really good wide receiver this year. He had over 1,000 yards last year, and I figure that he's going to do the same again. Obviously, North Carolina is not the greatest team in the world or anything, but against average teams, he's done really well. And as you can see in his production last season, if he can get eight catches and 1 or 2 touchdowns, then you're going to be happy with the production he has. Obviously, he's one of the more expensive wide receivers on the board, but I think he's probably worth it based on that. The next guy is Nathaniel Dell. He is the top pick, and he's in a tight game for Houston against UTSA. There's a 4-point spread in that game, and so I really like him as an option. He's got good stuff, and he was really good last year too for the most of the year, and so I think he's a really quality option. The next guy is going to be Mims for Oklahoma. He's kind of in a blowout game, but he's also the top guy for them, and they should be throwing the ball around a lot, at least early in the game, and so I look for him to be a guy that can really take advantage of that. Another guy that I like is Franklin from UTSA. He's at over 1,000 yards last season, and it's going to be a tight game, so he should be able to get a lot of opportunities to get catches, and so I look for him to score a decent amount of points. And as we get cheaper, we like Mr. Mingo from Mississippi. This guy, he showed some flashes of really good stuff last year, and even I think that he's going to be a top wide receiver for them. He also sometimes has done like some slot running, or like end around runs and stuff like that, and he can definitely get some extra yards and stuff from that perspective. Another guy that I like is Jacob Cowing for Arizona. He's probably the top under $7,000 price point guy that I could find for Arizona. He has some potential, and he's obviously pretty inexpensive, and so I like him as an option, especially as somebody that's to help you save in the lineup. And that game's still supposed to be pretty tight. 5-point spread in that game, so I definitely like guys that are in tight games where we can rely on them playing for most of the game. That's always an ideal thing. Then I have Dante Demus Jr. from Maryland. He's in a blowout risk situation, but he's kind of safe because he's not really the top starter, but he's kind of like the second guy, and so I kind of think that he's going to have a more opportunity to play deeper into the game if the blowout does happen. And then going from him is going to be Mr. Jesse Matthews for San Diego State. He definitely has scoring potential, and it's going to be a tight game, so he has, he's going to have the opportunity to get 8 or 9 catches. He probably doesn't have as much upside as some of the other guys, but he's still in a pretty solid spot, and his price really helps. Zay Flowers for Boston College, for Boston College. He has some scoring potential in a tight game as well. Again, it's kind of been a similar situation to the last two guys. They're not the absolute top option, but they're the second option, and they should get more deep into these games. Not to mention, they are going to, have good opportunities in the red zone and stuff like that. Thayer Thomas for NC State is my fourth to last guy. He actually should be the top option on his team for North Carolina State. And they're actually favored to win the game by 11 points, so there's a tiny risk of blowout, but I think he's a pretty good option for you. I wouldn't expect him to get like 25 fantasy points, but at his price point, even if you get 15, we'll be pretty happy. Then we have this guy. Now, this guy is probable to play, so we can't know for certain if he's going to play, but he should be the second tier wide receiver on the list. And he is considered one of their top receivers, along with Gunnar Romney, but he's been kind of hurt as well, and it's more likely that Puka is going to play, from what I can tell, versus Romney, so he might end up being the top option, and at $5,700, that's a good price. Cephas, Joshua Cephas for UTSA, he's going to be like the second guy for his team behind Zachary Franklin, and he definitely has scoring potential in a high octane game, and so I like him quite a bit. And then the last guy is going to be Gavin Blackwell for North Carolina. He should be a starting wide receiver this week as well. Last week he had about 14 fantasy points, so his price is $4,000 obviously. So, but if he can get another 13, 14 point game, then we should like that pretty good. So overall, I think we have a pretty good setup of wide receivers, running backs, and quarterbacks. I think there's enough tight games in this that we're going to have a quality amount of guys that are going to be playing most of the game and have the opportunity to score more points than they would just in the first half of a blowout. And so I like the slate pretty good. If there's anybody that you like that I didn't mention, feel free to leave it in the comment below. And have a nice day, guys.